All righty, Malcolm. First of all, let me thank you. I understand that you are overseas in an adjacent to Israel Muslim country. So I thank you for joining because there's a lot going on, obviously, which is why you're there. So let me just jump right into it. Obviously, following the recent airstrikes by Iran against Israel, many here back at home fear that a broader escalation in the region is imminent. So my question to you, Malcolm, being the expert that you are, how do you assess the potential for this conflict to expand? And what role do you think Iran is trying to play in the power dynamics of the Middle East?
Well, Iran has been in the power dynamics of the Middle East since 1979, when the Ayatollah Khomeini took power, overthrew the Shah of Iran, and took this country of 80 million people to become an Islamic fundamentalist state. However, they are also seeking to be a regional superpower. And everything you're seeing now is the culmination of Iran working to be that power that they want to be. They've got other people, other states, proxies, which are have been armed by Iran, from the Yemenis to the Syrians to the Iraqi Shia and Hezbollah. They have all been armed with one focus, and that focus has been to surround Israel with weapons and manpower and to attack and kill Jews where they can find them. And that has been going on for nearly 40 years now. All of their weapons development, all of these ballistic missiles, has an end state of knocking Israel down as a power and creating Iran as a regional superpower. Now, there's one other component I think we've talked about on your show before. They are in a power dynamic against Saudi Arabia. This goes back to the Second Islamic Civil War in the year 650, 650s, I believe, where the Shia Muslims split who are the minority Muslims, 15% of the Muslims in the world, from the Sunni Muslims that are 85% of the Muslims in the world. And since that time, Shia Islam has always sought to view itself as the dominant form of Islam. And they could do that by threatening Saudi Arabia, threatening the region. And eventually, that secondary thing, after dismantling Israel in their minds, is eventually taking power in control of Mecca and Medina and creating a Islam that is dominated by the Shia and not the Sunnah. That's a 100-year, mission for them. But everything you're seeing is a component of it. Why they're building weapons, why they have these commando forces. It's very important to them that they exercise this geopolitical military power against the Jews to show everyone else that they can be knocked down as well. Didn't work out too well for them yesterday, though.
Well, no, they did send 180 missiles, into Israel territory, much of which was taken out by the Iron Dome, but quite a few actually hit. Thank God there were no deaths, and I think maybe one casualty, which was terrible. I heard that it was a Palestinian individual where the debris had fallen. It's terrible. And, my heart goes out to that individual, whether he's Palestinian, Jewish, the whole 9 yards. This is absolutely ridiculous. But, a lot of people also turn around and say, Michael, you're somewhat critical of Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi Arabia. And that's actually not true. What we do, like here, what it says, Michael Cohen, Mea Culpa, nothing but the truth. If my facts make it seem as if though I have some animus towards Saudi, I do not. I have many friends who are Saudi. If my comments seem as if though I have a animus towards Mohammed bin Salman, I do not. In fact, I've read his book. I think he's wickedly smart, way too smart for Jared Kushner. But my concern is what happens if Iran starts to play a bigger Middle Eastern position? How does that affect Saudi Arabia? Because one thing that we know for certain, if the United States ever pulls away from Saudi Arabia, in terms of protection, on the very next day, Iran will attack Saudi Arabia and look to wipe out the entire Salman al Saud families once and for all, and to take over the land. That's as you're saying, that's a 1,000-year war.
1,400 years. This clash of ideologies have been happening in this interreligious sort of sparring match. But that being one thing, Saudi Arabia sees itself as a power, as a regional power also, but as an economic regional power, as the head of OPEC, having the largest reserves in that region. Iran views all of this as a threat to its own economic sovereignty, as well as spreading its arms out amongst the Shia Muslims that surround Saudi Arabia, as well as Israel. Iraq to the north, Syria to the northwest, Hezbollah to the west northwest, Yemen to the south, where Saudi Arabia fought a war against the Houthis for several years and withdrew after they realized that they couldn't suppress them without drastic measures. But all of these threats that Israel is seeing now, Iran has unleashed on other countries. The Yemenis bombarded the capital city of Riyadh. They blew up oil fields with drones and ballistic missiles. Even the United Arab Emirates, I lived there for 10 years, their international airport was hit with a drone attack that was launched from Yemen that flew all the way across the southern peninsula. Iran needs these players in place in order to not just inflict that belief that regional superpower, feeling that you cannot resist them. They'll march all over you, including against Saudi Arabia and our Gulf state allies, but also that religious belief that they are the better, stronger, more dynamic, more revolutionary Muslim, and that maybe everything since the 7th century was decided wrong when Khalif Ali, was killed, and the governor of Syria, Muawiyah, and the Shia-Sunnah split occurred. That's long ball, right? We are caught up in that long ball, and so is Israel. But Iran views themselves as now this force behind the force to attack the Jews, believing that will make them better Muslims, more honorable Muslims in the eyes of a lot of people. And if you watch Twitter, right, and see how they cheer a lot of people who are pro-Palestinian, who are Sunni Muslims, cheering Iran's attacks on the Israelis simply because they're attacking Jews.
Yeah. Okay. So, speaking about Israel, I want to bring this up and ask you this, right? Because as Israel and Hamas, continue to engage in this deadly warfare, what are the key intelligence or strategic failures on both sides that led right now to the current state of this conflict? And also, do you believe that either side is poised for a decisive victory?
Well, first, let me couch something in intelligence terms. I mean, I did tactical intelligence most of my career, which had strategic impact, right? One piece of information which could impact you. The October 7th failure of Israeli military intelligence and the national security apparatus to take the warnings of the low-level Israeli army officers and intelligence collectors seriously was a failure of not of actually collecting the intelligence, but processing it and believing it. That was almost pure arrogance. And the arrogance was developed along this lines. They wouldn't dare, right? Well, they did dare. And that's where the intelligence failure happened. After that, after October 8th, it was Israel's game. They were back onto it. They could wipe out as many Hamas members as they so chose to do. However, with regard to Hezbollah, with regard to Iran, with regard to Syria, the Shia, Yemen, Israel's been playing a long ball intelligence game with them. The attack on Hezbollah that occurred in this last week clearly had to be 20 or 30 years in the making. They just
Wow.
gamed this out. How would we best neutralize our enemies? Well, here's one way: get rid of all their top commanders by blowing their hands and genitals off, blinding them simultaneously. That is one of the greatest intelligence operations in history since World War II.
Yeah,
That's a
there really
World
was.
War II
There really
number.
was something. There really was something special, and it's funny because now you're going to know exactly who Hezbollah or Hamas is. Because they're all neutered with missing generally either a right hand or a left hand, depending upon which pocket that they would keep the beeper in.
Or
So,
blind. Yeah.
exactly. Hey, let me
What?
ask you this, Malcolm. Right? You have President Biden, and I get so angry, especially here in New York, and friends of mine who are Jewish that have this issue with President Biden, and now, of course, by association, Kamala Harris.
Mm,
President Biden has reaffirmed, and so has Kamala, U.S. support for Israel in its defense against Hamas. And people, they turn around. And one guy who I literally spoke to wish him a happy Rosh Hashanah, he started to talk to me about this, knowing, of course, my politics. And he's Israeli and fought in the Israeli army many, many years ago. He turned around and he goes, well, what they tell you, meaning the general public, that they reaffirm their support, their unwavering support for Israel, and what they do are two different things. Can
yeah.
you explain to me how they're two different things? What is it more that they want to see from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris right now that they are not already receiving, or that would alter the mindset that Biden and Harris and the upcoming, God willing, Harris-Walz administration are pro-Israel 100% and stand, as Kamala Harris said, our commitment to Israel is ironclad. What
Right.
am I missing here?
There is a faction in the United States that are ultra conservative, and I view them as sort of Zionism absolutists. I am. I mean, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. Yiddish was the first language I ever decrypted from Hebrew. But they see their position as only what could benefit Israel, no matter how extreme it is, right? Kahani high level extremism should be supported, or you don't trust it, or we don't believe in us. Look, we are allies of Israel. And as friends, sometimes your friends have to tell you when you are messing up or when you are being a little overboard. There's nothing wrong with telling, the Netanyahu government that they need to take more care in civilian casualties, while absolutely giving them everything that they need to carry out the defense of their nation. Look, 3 U.S. destroyers, 4 squadrons of U.S. fighter aircraft, that's over 100 aircraft, okay, took part in defending Israel the other day after this attack. 3 warships, Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, that's 2 more than took part the last April, literally sat off of Israel and shot down incoming ballistic missiles. Okay? We are doing our part. We support our ally. But what you can't say is just let us do whatever we want according to our rules, and your values have to be compromised. And if you're not a hard, crazy guy like Donald Trump, which he is crazy, right? This guy doesn't have any real care about Israel. He doesn't have any real concerns about the stability of the Middle East. If somebody were to come up from him in one of our opposing nations and actually offer him, billions of dollars, you would have to consider he might accept that and change U.S. foreign policy on the basis of how it
Whoa, whoa,
enriches
whoa,
him.
whoa. What do you mean he might? That's a fucking fact, my brother. All right. That is as factual as that you are not,
I
that you are overseas. You could say, anybody can say whatever the hell they want. I also
I
sometimes
knew you were going to say that.
when I am listening to Trump talk about the fact that Iran received $100 billion of money that was unfrozen. Is that an accurate number? First of all, and
Not at all.
two, it's not. It's not even close, right? I don't even know where that number came from.
They make numbers up, and the numbers they're talking about was the money that was supposed to be released for humanitarian purposes to Iran as part of the interest that we on money that we had withheld that was Iran's. That money was being held in trust by Qatar. Qatar and the United States both agreed to freeze and seize that money up right after they had trouble with Iran
So,
a few
so
years
Malcolm,
ago.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
Just made
interrupt
it
you.
up.
I hate interrupting you because you're such a genius. I cannot find where they've come up with this $100 billion that they're talking about. I've looked for it. I've seen articles, but they're written by these far right-wing bloggers and so on. I really hope that they're not taking that specific number of $100 billion given to Iran, which now all of a sudden is not for humanitarian purpose. And I think that was like $9 or $10 billion that was
9 billion.
frozen 20,
Yeah,
30 years ago.
yeah, and that the United States was earning interest on and was going to lose in the courts and would have had to have turned it over directly if we didn't come up with this deal. That money's still sitting in a Qatari bank and will probably be seized at some point and given as retribution to Israel. But all I can say is this: these guys just lie. They just make things up whole cloth. Iran has been
But
making
American Jews,
hundreds of.
Malcolm, American Jews are relying on that information, and
I
they're
know,
constantly
I know.
attacking Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on the fact that, well, they're not as pro-Israel. I am telling you for certain, when I hear Trump talking about this $100 billion, he's praying to God that they
Mm.
do have $100 billion, because if they give him 20 of it, 25 of it, he'll turn on Israel in a second. He'll turn on Saudi Arabia in a heartbeat. He'll turn on anybody for a dime.
He dropped hints that he wanted to lift sanctions against Russia and Iran in order to alter their behavior. Look, what the man sees is petrodollars flowing by him in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and that he
Yep.
can't catch any of it. And that must tear his heart apart. But really, Iran makes all of its money selling oil to China. China doesn't
Yep.
care anything about our sanctions regime. China doesn't care about anything. Look, when I fought the Iranians in direct naval combat in 1988, they had one anti-ship missile left in their inventory, which the United States sold them in 1989. It missed my ship by 150 feet. The Iranians learned from that. They said, we're going to sell China all the oil we can. And now they have thousands of anti-ship missiles. So as geopolitical players, our desires on how to curb Iran are just us getting beat at the camel market. Let's just be honest about that. They're good at their game. They know their region. And they also know that China will do whatever in order to keep the oil flowing, to keep trade in Asia working to their benefit and allowing their society to populate beautiful five-star hotels like this, and for them to defeat the United States on the economic battlefield. So China doesn't give two flips about what happens with Iran and their oil. They will sell them weapons, and they will facilitate anything that allows China to make money. What our problem is that not we, but the people who are very narrow-minded, the Trump voters who view China as a competitor, don't seem to have a problem with allowing our enemies like Russia to support Iran, Iran to support Russia, Russia and Iran supporting Hamas, Russia literally giving cover to Assad and Hezbollah in Syria and Lebanon. What the hey? You guys need to understand who the allies are here. Joe Biden is not the enemy. Russia is the enemy. But many of these people don't seem to have a problem with allowing America to slide quickly into dictatorship in the next 30 some odd days if they think that they're going to get some benefit for Israel. That's not how it's going to work.
And it's not how it works, and it's stupid no matter how you want to slice it. Since we were very short-sighted, so since we're talking about Russia, I want to talk about just a quick update on the Russia-Ukraine war, because let's be clear. on the war front between Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine's counteroffensive is being seen as stalling in some areas, while Russia is continuing its assault on Ukraine's critical infrastructure.
Hmm.
Somebody
Well,
who has been there, and I've spoken to you, in fact, the last Mea Culpa with you, I think you were in Ukraine. What do you think Ukraine needs militarily, diplomatically, to turn the tide back in their favor?
when I went to the Democratic National Convention this summer, I went there to try to represent the interest of the United States relationship with Ukraine, to understand that the United States needs to allow the Ukraine to not only take their own gloves off, but the gloves that the United States cinched down, right, and gave them restrictions on. Ukraine needs to do deep strike into Russia in order not to damage the Russian economy. They're doing that with drones right now. In order to destroy the ammunition dumps and air bases, which are lobbing missiles right into the heart of not even Ukrainian military targets, Ukrainian cities, just killing civilians. Ukraine did a brilliant strike just the other day where they blew up the transshipment base of North Korean ballistic missiles into Ukraine. But if they had had the American authorization to use Scalp or Storm Shadow or had the American Joint Standoff Weapons System, they could literally devastate entire air bases. They could devastate ammunition dumps that are deep inside of Russia that are within range of the weapons that we've given them. I hope that the Harris administration's philosophy is going to be World War II style total victory, right? Now, will that drag out the war? Well, when the Ukrainians did the Kharkiv counteroffensive this year, I'm sorry, the Kursk counteroffensive, where they went up into Russia through an unguarded section of the border, they just proved to Russia that they could bring the Russian army into maneuver warfare. The Russians have now had to pull off the main battlefront major combat units, entire divisions of units, to go up into a section of the war that didn't exist more than a few months ago. The reason that the Russians are still attacking at places like Vuhedar and along the battlefront is that the Russian senior staff have a belief that they are just 1 day, 1 kilometer away from absolute victory. They could take the town of Vuhedar. It will put them in a position that's advantageous, but Ukraine's going to get it back. If you take 5 kilometers, you're taking 5 kilometers. Ukrainians went into Russia and took some insane number, like 30,000 square kilometers of land up there, which forces the Russians to have to bring soldiers up. But it isn't in a trench. It's maneuver warfare, where one element gets to go against the other, and the Ukrainians are kicking their butts. And they're showing Russia there's a price to be paid here. You come onto our land, we're going to show you what it's like to go onto your land. The big
Let me tell
problem
you
is that,
something.
yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
let me say this: that wait till the real body count on Russian soldiers gets
Mm.
released. Right now, because everything is state-run news, they're not reporting it. But when Mamachka and Babushka don't get to see their son or their grandson come home from the war, all right, they know that he's not off in Paris,
Right.
enjoying some croissants and some coffee. They know exactly what happened. And that's going to be an uprising in Russia like I don't think that
That's
country has ever
happening.
seen.
That's happening on a minor scale. That's actually happening. The problem is there's still a state security apparatus. They still behave ruthlessly. One thing we noticed up in Kursk province is Russian soldiers did what Russian soldiers do. They looted their own territory. They went into people's
Yeah.
homes. They stole everything that they could, and the Ukrainian army ended up feeding all the people who had been abandoned by the Russian army up there. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are not going to be able to go home when the Russians come because they talked bad about Vladimir Putin. They talked good about how the Ukrainians took care of them. But, the Russians are getting desperate. Just today, we had a video of Russian soldiers executing 16 Ukrainian prisoners that were surrendered, lined up, full scale video of them shooting these soldiers to death. The Russians are going to find out. The Ukrainians are going to have no mercy on them for this. But the war is what the war is. There is going to be a strategic breakthrough eventually. The introduction of the F-16s gives them more throw weight, better Western weapon capacity. It's not a silver bullet. But all of these silver bullets we've given them combined is really going to help.
Yeah. Hey, did you get a chance in the foreign country that you're in right now with, unfortunately, pretty shitty Wi-Fi, which is not unexpected? Did you get a chance to see the vice presidential debate last night?
Actually, I had to listen to the live stream of it because I was literally out in the desert and there was like 2 bars of Wi-Fi.
So the question and then I want to ask you is, during the recent vice presidential debate, Walz made a pointed comment that, and here's the quote, democracy doesn't die in darkness. It dies in silence. And then we have to take that incredible comment and contrast it to Trump and Vance's actions to those of Harris Walz's campaign. What's your reaction to that statement in the context of global democracy?
I think that the answer that Tim Walz gave was brilliant and is now 30 some odd days out from a quite possibly the most critical American election since 1860, since the Civil War, where America has to decide if it's going to dictatorship or retain a republic, as Benjamin Franklin said, if we can keep it. So we cannot be silent at this point. We have to stand up. We really have to show our voices that we reject Project 2025, the destruction of the Department of Education, the destruction of the federal bureaucracy, and turning generals into loyalists instead of loyalists to the Constitution of the United States. And the dangerous idea that they're going to use the Army, National Guard, and police to go door to door and checkpoints and round up 20 million people and put them into camps, that's crazy. So it's important that, like Tim Walz says, we don't let democracy die in silence.
Yeah. So, on top of that, yesterday with the debate, there was obviously a very interesting stance. And again, it goes right back to the earlier question that I can't understand so many of my Jewish friends that, are fighting for Trump and for shady Vance, in terms of because they believe that they're better for Israel. Tim Walz last night expressed extremely strong support for continued U.S. aid to Israel. But J.D. Vance made an argument yesterday that the U.S. needs to prioritize our domestic issues over foreign wars. So my question to you is, how do these two approaches reflect a broader ideological divide between the Democratic and the Republican parties?
First, this is America. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can fight a 2-ocean war, which happened in World War II, and still fight fires in the Pacific Northwest using the Army and National Guard. That happened during World War II also. We can also produce, toasters at the same time we produce tanks. J.D. Vance and this anti-immigrant, racist, blatant ideology of the hatred of the other, the know-nothing style hatred of immigrants in a nation of immigrants, is just utterly disgusting. It's ruinous. It is dangerous. It's authoritarian. And it is wholly un-American. I don't even like talking about it because it's so ridiculous.
Well, I got to then push on to a whole nother part, which is part and parcel to this, right? I hate to do it, but I have to, right? And we're going to talk about some of the contrasts between Harris and Trump. And we start talking about like global democracy and global security. I mean, Kamala advocates for international alliances, all right? Whereas Trump, on the other hand, is leaning towards isolationism. We keep hearing from Trump, America first, right? America only. This is not normal. Tell me, Malcolm, what are the dangers of Trump's stance as it right now deals with isolationism?
Let's just embrace history a little bit here. The phrase "America First" was the follow-on phrase of the America First movement, organized by Charles Lindbergh, based off of the Nazi American Bund from the 1930s. The same people that did a march in Madison Square Garden in 1940, supporting Adolf Hitler. They had posters of Adolf Hitler next to George effing Washington. Okay? And these are the same people who didn't want America to be internationalists and join the troubles in Europe at the time that Great Britain was not demanding, but begging America to assist her so that the rest of Europe didn't fall. Lindbergh and all the rest had so permeated American government with the belief that they were, that America first was a political threat to them. They sent back a ship full of Jews called the St. Louis, and most of them to their deaths. Look, if you like international trade and you like money, okay, and you like the free flow of an exchange of ideas and culture and cash, we invented international trade during and after World War II. And I just don't understand how they expect to be the billionaires that they're going to keep being and cut off America from the rest of the world and surrender everything to China and Russia and Iran and threaten all of our allies, who, by the way, are the richest nations in the world. I don't get it. It's stupid. It's short-sighted. But look, the man in charge is a 78-year-old demented moron, okay, who doesn't seem to know which day it is. He thinks he's fighting Barack Obama or Joe Biden or whoever. And this guy, 1/4 of the electorate believes he is their man. We are in a dangerous, dangerous situation here if things go badly in the next 30 days. But I don't believe that's going to happen. I think Kamala Harris is going to tsunami these people, and I think there will be a wave of rejection against this ignorant, know-nothing, self-serving, white supremacist, a Christian nationalist worldview. That's all he's stoking. He's attacking immigrants in a nation of immigrants. It's just insane.
Yep. I said that I just returned yesterday from Rome, where I was on RAI television, RAI, with a guy named Massimo Giletti. And, one of the things that we were talking about is Trump's claims of pulling out of NATO. And, what people don't realize is that NATO was a founding member. And going 75 years, we've had this alliance. 75 years, since 1949. And all of a sudden, this genius wants to pull out of NATO, right, and allow Russia to walk through Ukraine, go straight into Poland, and God knows what else. We're talking about global instability. But I actually want to bring up the whole concept of your expertise on insurgencies and terrorism. That's kind of like your expertise. Do you foresee another insurrection-like event in the United States, similar to January 6th, when Trump loses the election?
I wrote a book called "They Want to Kill Americans," right? The malicious, terrorist, and deranged ideology of the Trump insurgency. When I started that book, it was written as the coming Trump insurgency. By the time I got to first draft, it was here. We already had January 6th. We saw that the people who did January 6th were relentless in their belief that they were right. They were calling them political prisoners and hostages. I'm going to set up exactly what I said to Bill Maher, right after the election, where he thought we were going to go into a period of kumbaya. One of two things is going to happen here. If we win, they are going to go into insurrection and insurgency. And this time, armed.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ollie. Clean, fresh nutrition your dog needs in 5 flavors that they'll absolutely flip over. You don't have to be a veterinary nutritionist to know that feeding your dog real, whole foods with minimal processing is one of the best choices that you can make for their health. A perfectly portioned, whole fresh food diet has been proven to extend your pup's life by 2.5 years. And who doesn't want more time with their best friend? With absolutely no harmful fillers, no preservatives, Ali is made in U.S. kitchens with ingredients carefully sourced from trusted growers and producers around the world. You see, because the time between Ali's gentle cooking and your dog's chowing down is minimal, they don't need preservatives to extend shelf life. With 5 protein first recipes like fresh beef with sweet potatoes, fresh turkey with blueberries, or fresh lamb with cranberries, you might start thinking, damn, my dog eats better than I do. And that's probably true when it comes to Ali. So I want to be clear about something. I actually don't have a pet. I don't have a dog, but I do have a neighbor who has the absolute cutest cavapoo that goes crazy for me whenever she sees me. And by the way, her name is Luna. So here's what you need to do. First thing that you do is you fill out Ali's 30-second quiz, and they'll create a customized meal plan based on your pup's weight, the activity level, and other health information. Ali crunches the numbers, and then they recommend the right recipe and the daily portions for your precious pup based on hundreds of thousands of real dog results. Now, for the first-time users, Ali will send out your pup's first box with 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks worth of meals and a guide on how to gradually switch them over to their new diet. Ali offers 3 meal plans to choose from. You really think that this is for a human? They offer 3 meal plans to choose from. So you can choose between a full fresh plan, fresh topper plan, or a mixed plan with their freshly baked recipes for your special fur puppy. I mean, they also have treats and supplements. So look, like I said, I don't have a pup, but I promise you that your dog will love it. In fact, I have a video of Luna chowing down the very first day that I brought it over to their apartment. So let me be clear now. Ali, they are offering a deal to let your pup taste test a personalized meal plan. So head right now to Ali.com and tell them all about your dog and use Cohen, and you'll get 60% off your first box of meals when you subscribe today. So head to Ali, that's OLLIE.com, and enter code Cohen, that's me, COHEN, to get 60% off your first box. Again, that's Ali, OLLIE.com, and enter Cohen to get 60% off your first box. And they offer a clean bowl guarantee on their first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back.
Over, not large scale, it will be multiple small scales everywhere. But they will once again believe none of this was true. They didn't lose the election. It was all stolen, and they're going to wait for their orange god to tell them to go to arms. The second component of that is political. And the political component of that insurgency has already happened. The Republican Congress that's in power right now is the political arm of the insurgency that will empower them to believe that they, local governments, state governments, do not have to follow orders of the, as the 10th Amendment of the Constitution says, right? Federalism. That's when we are going to start fracturing at the seams. On the other hand, if they win, God forbid, right? If they win, these militiamen, the average old guy on the street who's now shouting at people, are going to start acting like they are the armed enforcement arm of the Trump administration. And that could lead us with their plan to deport 20 million people. You will see running gun battles like the streets of Gaza if they try to round up 20 million people and try to take the wives and kids and families apart. When in a country with 400 million guns, 1% of them is 400,000. I'm not saying that's going to happen, I'm saying that it's a natural inclination for people to not let people drag their wife and kids
By the
off
way,
or
I'm
take them
saying no, no,
forcibly
no,
away.
no. You don't say it. I've said this before. I was under the impression that it was 10 million, the roundup. But even at 10
Who
million,
wants?
our our army, right, our militia, our police force, all combined amount to just under 2 million people in total. That's assuming you get all 2 million people to join into this fucking act that Trump wants to create. You're talking
Yeah,
about 1 to 5. There will be gun battles in the street like people
I
have never even imagined.
I wrote a whole Substack on this. If you go to malcolmnance.substack.com, I wrote a whole story about how neighbors wouldn't let their neighbors be taken away by the militias. Who, by the way, Trump has hinted that he would allow sheriffs to deputize these militias to become armed enforcement officers under the United. It's insane. I can't believe we're using these words. It's crazy. It hasn't happened since 1860 that people wanted to destroy this country this way. 20 million people are going to fight. There are people there that are going to fight. And other people are going to John Brown this. They're going to come out as allies. Governors will not enforce Donald Trump's laws. This is the fastest way to civil war. And I think a lot of these fat guys with AR-15s, they want this. They want this feeling that they can go out and do like the movie Civil War and just shoot people with impunity and determine whether they're American or not. Again, as an intelligence professional, I do not even like thinking this scenario should be playing out in the United States. But here we are. Crazy people are talking about it. We have people cheering at the Republican National Convention. Mass deportations now. Try it, because you're going to try to round up American citizens, but whether by accident or on purpose or disregard, right? People will not be, you American citizens will be forced to go through police, National Guard, and Army checkpoints. How would you feel about that? Having to show your papers. What kind of Americans are out here advocating this? My nation, my family served 152 years to defend America. This is a disgusting idea that we would have a president who would say that he wants to round up citizens and kick them out of the country, not just citizens, but emigres, legal ones, illegal ones,
It's the
however.
same fucking dummy that keeps talking about and refuses to get off of it. The Haitian community in Springfield, Ohio, eating your pets and eating geese from the local ponds. It's the
The man,
same level of stupidity and
that's not
ignorance.
stupidity. That man's mentally ill. Okay, let's just say what's obvious here. The man is mentally ill. And people are talking like they're eating your dogs, they're eating your pets is some cute, humorous phrase that we can just let roll off a duck's back. If any other person in America had said that, we would be railroading them out of government. But Donald Trump, as the tribal leader of the authoritarian white supremacist tribe that he is now openly calling for people to join, has been given this pass. And the
Yeah.
news media is completely absent in his statements about bloodbaths, allowing the police to do the purge and go out and just have one
Oh my
hour
God,
where
you
they
heard
would
that? You
clean
heard
things
that
up.
too? That the I
Oh,
from he was taking, so to my listeners that aren't for, there was a movie called The Purge, which is like one night out of every year they allowed the citizens of this community to go out and to
nation.
purge of the nation to go out and to purge
Just kill,
undesirables. Just
just
kill
kill
whoever
anyone
you
you
think
wanted.
is
Anyone who you
an
wanted.
undesirable. That's what Trump was looking at. This idiot must have been on the plane and the movie was on and they started to watch it and he thought it was a good idea. Just
No, I think
imagine
he
you
thought it
don't
was.
like your next door neighbor because their food, the smell emanates into or you want a bigger apartment, right? So you go and you knock on the door. Hi, knock, knock. Who is it? Boom, right? And it's
He must have.
legal.
He must have thought it was a Project 2025 documentary, and he's taken it to heart. This conversation we're having, honestly, Michael, between you and I love you, man. This is madness. This
Yeah.
shouldn't even be discussed in the United States as something that's considered as an actual policy. And I feel disgusted. I feel disgraced.
Well,
I can't even believe that I feel sullied by this. The whole conversation about Donald Trump and his craziness that he is advocating for, and that 40% apparently the American public think is an a-okay idea, is going to have to make me take a full-on silkworm shower tonight.
Yeah, well, it's actually,
Silkwood
well,
shower.
fortunately, Malcolm, it's a concept of a plan because the guy doesn't have any plan. He doesn't even have a plan to be a stupid plan. He has a concept of a plan, like the Purge. I mean, it's really beyond. But I want to ask you this because another big issue that's really playing right now into this election cycle is cyber warfare. And
Mm.
these elections are likely to see, especially over the course of the last month, an increase in cyber attacks, an increase in these bot farms,
Mm.
misinformation, disinformation, malinformation from actors like Russia, like
Mhm.
Iran, North Korea. How vulnerable is the United States to cyber warfare? And more importantly, how prepared are we compared to previous election cycles to deal with this?
I think the National Cyber Security Agency has got a good handle on this. The National Security Agency at Fort Meade handles all of the external threats. We know who the players are. The biggest threat, I mean, barring some October surprise where some malicious actor decides to drop the U.S. electrical grid for Donald Trump, and then he can say Joe Biden didn't keep us safe. That's always a possibility. I think we have a pretty good handle on this, but cyber warfare versus information warfare, we can handle cyber. That's keys and codes, and that can be intercepted, that can be blocked. It's misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, of which Donald Trump is now the number one purveyor. Not just, I think there's some problem that we have to grapple with. Was Joseph Stalin okay, or those Soviet leaders, were they the worst liars in history? I think Donald Trump has more documented lies than any person in American history, without question. And we have people in this country who would rather believe those lies than ever have to face the facts. He may, in fact, be on par with the Stalins, the Lenins, the people who lied, who killed millions. Trump doesn't want to kill millions. He just wants to put money in his pocket. And he's willing to say anything. The stupid comment the other day about Kamala Harris committing murder, all right? It's insane. It's insane. And again, it shows mental incapacity, not just malicious policy, although it's that as well.
Malcolm, you and I have had so many conversations over the years, and one common theme that we have always shared, I think more than any other theme, is if America is strong, the world is strong. If America is weak, the world is weak. So my question really to you is, how does the health of American democracy under Trump, and then we could compare that, of course, to under Harris, impact the global perception of democracy as an institution? Would the international community act differently if Trump wins and continues his isolationist policies, or do they act differently under a Harris? You see, I bring this question up to you because I have had people turn around and say to me, this is bullshit. Nothing ever changes. It's just the only thing that
Mm,
changes is the name, the
yeah.
face, the color of the skin. Now it's the gender. So there's nothing that Trump is going to be able to do that Kamala Harris isn't going to be able to do, or vice versa. And I completely disagree. But I want to hear it from an expert.
I wrote a book, and we should go run out and get Ruth Ben-Ghiat right now, or Timothy Snyder. But I'll give you my perspective on it. I wrote a book called The Plot to Destroy Democracy, which was Vladimir Putin's strategy of using his intelligence agencies, his political power, and money from United Russia political group to literally dismantle liberal democracies around Europe and the United States by using democracy to destroy democracy. The world is now on the cusp of a shift between either a continued state of stable global democracy building or a catastrophic immediate collapse into authoritarianism, and where dictators and strong men like Orban or weak men like Donald Trump will go out and destroy their own basis of law, democracy, and stability for their own personal profit. It'll be a catastrophic chain all the way down there. And, I can't imagine which country is going to step up to fill the void that if the United States goes down as the global leader of democracy, it's like spitting on the grave of every man, woman that died in World War II to free us from authoritarianism. And now we have Americans out there who think, the Nazis and some of these other right-wing authoritarian groups were the good guys.
Yeah, I don't get it, and I was thinking the exact same thing. Who steps up? Who is even capable in the world within which to step up to take the place of the United States of America? And I don't think it exists. I just don't think it exists. So my question to you is, when we were talking before about these militants rising up if Trump should become, God forbid, a million times president again, think about groups like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. Do you think that if Trump wins, that they will reorganize in 2024? And the real question that I want to attach to this is, what then happens, and how does the United States counter what I think you and I both will acknowledge is a true domestic threat?
Well, first off, they won't be a true domestic threat because, having been empowered by the Supreme Court, Donald Trump can, one, blanket pardon all of them. He's already said he's going to do that. Two, there was talk of giving these people a presidential, political prisoner medal and giving them preferential hiring into the new loyalist-only Trump government. This is insane. Again, it's a conversation we should never be having. But these people are going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if he turns them into an authorized government brown shirts, a militia. Proud Boys, all, the three percenters, all of the, other militias that took part in the Capitol insurrection. God forbid this doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I just want to go back for a quick second again and talk about the debate the other day between Tim Walz and Shady Vance. But it's Shady Vance and Von Schützenpants. In fact, there was a great guy from Texas that wrote a song about it called Shady Vance Von Schützen. And he credited the story to me because those are two nicknames that I had given to these two assholes. But I want to, a lot of people discounted the debate and they say, you know what, there's not a lot of import to the vice president. It doesn't really matter. They don't really do anything. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly, and not waiting for, God forbid, something to happen to the president, whoever it might be. But I think the vice president plays an incredibly strong and an important role. And I thought that Tim Walz's strong recent debate against Vance, I think it drew attention to his command over international and domestic issues. I really thought he was really crystal clear, and he did it in that great coach-like manner. So anybody who's ever played ball and had a coach knows exactly the type of uplifting person that Tim Walz actually is. How important do you think the vice president's leadership in shaping U.S. future domestic and foreign policy actually is?
I think it's very important. And the vice president should be exactly what that position is, not just a tiebreaker in the Senate. They should be the last best advisor to the president of the United States when that person makes their bottom line decision. As Joe Biden said when he was with Barack Obama, he was the last person that he spoke to. Same thing with Kamala Harris. She was the last person he spoke to on all the big issues. I hope Tim Walz keeps that up. He's a great guy, and he seems to have common sense on his head, as the coach, former sergeant major. So, I love that.
One last question for you here. When it
All
came
right.
to Tim Walz, all right,
All right.
what happened now when this idiot J.D. Vance started questioning his service to the country? What was that about? And how angry as a veteran are you?
Yeah, as a veteran, I'm furious. Chris Chaliza, who was an Army veteran, I was quite surprised, was the man who came up with the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth, who tried to use veterans against veterans to humiliate John Kerry back in 2004. And he got J.D. Vance to do that. Vance came off as a complete and total, utter fool in doing it. And now veterans hate J.D. Vance. But granted, there's going to always be a crew of guys who are hardcore loyalists to Trump, but veterans now see it. All right, he'll attack your honorable service if it suits their political needs, and that's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, look, Malcolm, go to bed. I know it's really late there right now. Thank you so much. Again, you make us all just that much smarter here on Mea Culpa. Appreciate you, my friend. Stay safe, and I'll see you back when you're stateside.
Will do. All right.